Listening First Aid, an Empathic Approach by Gregorio Billikopf, University of California. The Panama Canal may serve as an adequate analogy for the role of effective listening skills. As a youth, I traversed the canal several times as we sailed in a freight ship from the port of Valparaiso in Chile to New York. Massive lock gates are utilized to manage the water levels in the canal so that ships can move from one direction to another. The water level behind one set of closed locks can be much higher than that of the next compartment through which a ship will travel. We can compare this scene to the state of mind of an individual suffering from deep emotional wounds or involved in a serious interpersonal conflict. With disparate water levels, there is a buildup of pressure behind the closed locks. If one were to open these lock gates, the flow would be mostly unidirectional. Likewise, a party who is holding in her emotions needs a release. Such an individual is unlikely to think clearly about the challenge or be receptive to outside input from another. The role of the listener or helper is to allow such an individual to open the lock gates. When he does, the water gushes out. During this venting process, there is still too much pressure for a person to consider other perspectives. Only when the water level has leveled off between the two compartments does the water begin to flow evenly back and forth. The role of the listener is to help empty the large reservoirs of emotion, anger, stress, frustration, and other negative feelings until the individual can see more clearly. Not until then can a party consider the needs of the other. Perhaps we can think of it as listening first aid. At one enterprise, I had just been introduced by the proprietor to one of the parties involved in a conflict where I would be the mediator. As a mediator, I use the party-directed approach wherein the mediator meets separately with each individual in a pre-caucus before ever bringing them together into a joint session. To a great extent, the purpose of that pre-caucus is to be a good listener. But returning to my story, as soon as the owner left us alone and I began to listen, this individual broke into tears. A similar situation took place at a different enterprise where one of the managers began to cry, ostensibly because of other issues pressing heavily upon him. Had these men come immediately into a joint meeting with their respective contenders, their feelings of vulnerability might just as easily have turned into anger and defensiveness. In another organization, I was informed that the pre-caucus would be quite brief, as the person I was about to listen to was not a man of many words. Yet this individual spoke to me for almost 2 hours. By the time we finished, he felt understood and had gained much confidence. During the joint session, this same employee was even able to laugh when it was appropriate. I have found that these silent types will often open up when there is someone who will truly listen. The process of listening so others will talk is called empathic listening. Empathy, according to some dictionary definitions, means
to put oneself in a position to understand another person.
Certainly, this is an aspect of empathy. We prefer to define empathy, however, as it is often used in psychology.
The process of attending to another so the individual feels heard in a non-judgmental way.
Empathic listening requires that we accompany a person in her moment of sadness, anguish, self-discovery, challenge, or even great joy. This approach to listening was developed by Carl Rogers, author of Client-Centered Therapy. Rogers applied the method to therapeutic as well as human resource management skills. When an individual feels understood, an enormous emotional burden is lifted, stress and defensiveness are reduced, and clarity increases. So, whether you are a mediator, a helping professional, a supervisor, a co-worker, a spouse, a parent, or a friend, We hope that this program will be instructive.